Hey, what's up, guys? So, I just wanted to go ahead and kind of give you guys an update on things as of late. So, as you guys can tell, I've officially hit 1,000,000 gems. So, we're at 1,021,000 gems. I've got another 30,000 gems roughly coming here in just a day or two. And of course, I just wanted to go ahead and kind of give you an update. So, in particular, talking gear, again, I've recently made a pretty huge gear change. You guys have probably noticed that now I'm not wearing the gargantuan belt, but I'm wearing the storm tassets. Now, I kind of want to rotate between these depending on the situation, but I'm wearing the tassets right now. Now, part of the reason why I like the tassets is I'm going to get a little bit of HP and defense, which is a good, helpful habit, I believe. And then, of course, I switched out a blight ring for one of my burning scrolls. And again, same reason. It's just the stats are now a little bit more even, but I added a lot of HP and defense that really kind of needed to be there in the first place. Granted, that with all of that being said, of course, Guildfest is over with. I ended up picking up a handful of items. Which were all pretty useful, at least in one way or another. But let's get into the fact of where and how can you get these kind of gems? Because some people are wondering, like, how do you get that many gems and get it so quickly? I tell you what, the Fortune Dragon for this time around is really, 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 really lucrative. I think out of the labyrinth alone, I won like somewhere around 300,000 gems and five separate times. And part of the reason I did and win as much as I did is both in part to the fact that, if you have people out there that go after these events as they come up and around, you would be surprised at how much you can actually get. Even now we've got gym loads going on right now, and believe me, if you take advantage of this stuff as it's around, you're gonna get a lot of gyms, and you're gonna get a lot of them pretty quick. Now, obviously, that isn't to say that you won't have competition, but again, I'm going after level 50s. I'm going after, so level 2s, basically, or level 3s, level 4s, level 50s. I don't even know what I was saying there. But, again, yeah, just going on a mass gather spree is a really good way to fetch a ton of gems. And it probably helps to put on, like, gather gear, gear that increases your travel speed. But, again, on that topic, right? Again, familiars wise, I just recently kind of went through. Again, this is probably the one place that, frankly, I think any free to play, normal play, pay to play, I don't care, whatever kind of player you are. To be honest with you, if you want my advice, I can tell you between Harpy, Jimming Gremlin, Totemist, Gryphon, Goblin, even this guy here, like Magus. There are so many to pick out here that I would say that are incredibly helpful. But Magus and Boulder are definitely my top favorites. Evil Weevil, Aquarius, and Harpy are up there as well. Harpy especially because of the VIP point items that you can get every single day. Plus the shelter capacity, which is not really that bad actually. Now, granted, again, I'm not too far behind with Jim and Gremlin because who wouldn't want to get a few thousand gems every couple days? Like, that's not pretty bad if you ask me. But again, familiars wise, I'm finding that to be really helpful because I think I did this just yesterday. But there you go. A few hundreds are okay, but that doesn't mean I might get a couple. I might get a 5,000 one day. That stuff it adds up pretty quick. But of course, granted, you do all that and you collect your gems, you do all that jazz. Where else can I actually improve? Well, here's the thing, right? Another thing that people have been wondering, and this is just a quick tip, is how do you print troops and why do you have all manners? Like, what's going on here? What? Okay, look. The easiest way to remember, okay, when it comes to printing troops is that when it comes to tier 4s, you only need one barrack. You don't need like a gajillion barracks for a single tier 4 unit. Really, to be honest with you, 6,000's good enough. On the cost, it saves you about 4 to 5%, roughly, at least on like gymming them, purely straight gymming them. Like, it works a lot better. When it comes to training tier 3s, then all you have to do is add a barrack. So now you're doing 12,000 a pop. It's a little cheaper. Do tier 2s, okay, do 3. If you're doing tier 1s, obviously 4 or higher. But the logic is about the same. And it's just to cheapen that cost because there is a little bit of a difference, at least in terms of how much you can save. Is it noticeable? Kinda. It becomes more noticeable if you're printing up, have like say a couple thousand, 10,000 or so. But there is, of course, that. Now, I guess in regards to why would a person want to have all banners, right? To answer a lot of questions about that. Okay, a lot of people have noticed that as of late, I'm not afraid to play with only 40,000 for an infirm. Part of the reason why is because of the actual buildings themselves. If you notice, buildings like these, for example, have army attack associated to them. So for every one of these, which again, there's about 15 total, you can take 15 times 2, and that's about 30% army attack that you usually wouldn't have. And vice versa. If let's suppose you had infirms, you can apply the same logic if you had the same amount. And obviously that means you could have up to 600,000 for an infirm total. But you put that together, that's an easy way to kind of determine what your stats are. Now, obviously, for me, okay, I've been rally leading. I still do war just like anybody. Okay, even though I have a 40,000 infirm. Now, you're probably thinking, well, how? Well, look. Okay, if you go up against somebody, all right, and let's say it's a tier 3 player, all right, a tier 3 player stands no chance against a tier 4 player. I could send 250k right there. I guarantee you, he won't even get close. And just to prove a point, all right, I've had some people that I literally, this is exactly like point for point, they're like not even getting close. I mean, they get maybe a couple thousand here and there, but it drops like a rock. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, how the heck did you do that? Why would someone attack you? Well, funny enough, garrison trapping is a thing. And in case you want to know, it's the reverse form of flattery. Because really all you got to do is, find yourself an alt and put your troops on it, and then play like you're dead, or intentionally scout, hit tiles, or hit camps, and basically irritate people, making sure that you both have an anti-scout on that account as well as your main account. Wait for the bait to trigger and rinse repeat. It's a pretty simple process, but again, just to give you some idea of just how successful it is, there's 59,000 there, 70k there. In some cases you can even, in this case I went after, I did some solos and such. But in some cases, you can even grab their leaders. And those are the best kind, right? Again, in this case, one of the few things, in case you're wanting to garrison trap, like if you're actually curious, what is the formula to garrison trap? Like, what do I need to have? Well, it's pretty simple. You actually have to have the core counter to whatever someone sends. So a really common core counter is just to go infantry cav. Because generally speaking, if you're going to go, one or the other, that means you're going to either have to have cav range or you're going to have to have what? I'll give it a second. Range, right? Because you got to get that cav, and then what are you going to get rid of? The infantry. So cav range, right? Is the only other counter that really works well for this. It is literally the only counter. Unless, let's suppose you go high range or you go high cav. That's a possibility, but it's really hard to accomplish. Does it happen? Yeah. But in those kind of situations, suppose if somebody goes high cav or high range, you got to make sure that whenever someone sends you an attack, you need to be able to eat it. And that means that if they're going to send full range, you need to see full infantry. That means if you have to pull, you got to pull. Garrisons are not one of those things that you can really mess around with too much. You have to be conscious of what you got in there at all times. But, again, just another tip for the day. Now, granted, another thing, right? If in case you guys want like some interesting advice, if let's suppose you're someone that is like anywhere between 30 to 60 million byte, all right, and you're just now starting to play the game, you're starting to progress, and you're starting to ask yourself, okay, so how do I get to a point where I can kind of do these kind of things, right? Like where I can garrison trap, I can, I can go around, hit, cause all kinds of hell. How can I do this as a free to play, right? Um, and my answer to that is that you need to be really conscious of a couple of things. Well, the troop compositions are incredibly important, all right? But also the stats, all right? I don't ignore stats here at all. In fact, actually, it's the core fundamental process to what makes it work so well. So that means, if you don't have your military research up to par, meaning that you don't have this up to 10 or 9 or 8, or if you don't have that as high as you can possibly get it in the bracket that you're fighting in, you're probably not going to do so well. But assuming that you did that, all right? If I have all infantry, or I have infant range or cav range, my gear has to reflect this. Okay, that means, if I go and check my stats, I had better not have a whole lot of range if I'm just sending infant cav. That means my talent respec needs to reflect this. Like, you can't be fooling around with the stats there too much. Like, you can't go one or the other. You need to be able to switch accordingly. That's what makes it so expensive. But even as a free to play, I mean, you could still play as like infantry in range, or a cav in range, or whatever pick you so please, for as long as you stick to it. If you decide that all of a sudden you want to go cav range, but then you don't make the necessary adjustments in your talent respect and your gear, you will actually end up having problems. Not to say that they will be really noticeable, but you just won't be able to do as much damage. Now, why do I say that? Because what will end up happening is that instead of getting dead, you'll just get wounded. And then you feel pretty dumb, because then you're like, well, I didn't kill anything, and that's exactly your problem. You gotta have them stats, man, if you want to kill the till, all right? But without further ado, right? I have a ton of speeds. I mean, as you can tell, I've been saving for, I don't even know how long anymore. I've got so many speeds now that it's an ungodly amount of speeds. And to build the army that I went to build, it takes an enormous amount of resources. And now you might be wondering, how do you do that, right? How do you build up and get to a point where you could be a rally trap, or be able to, build up a trap account or something like that? My advice is that you should never try to build that stuff up slowly. All right. In my experience, I have had people that have rallied me out. I have had people that have knocked me down in the middle of that. And believe me, if you're not willing to sit down and collect the resources beforehand, and then you decide that, oh, hey, I'm just going to go start building these troops, believe me, you're going to get knocked down somehow. One way or the other, somewhere, somehow, someone is going to knock you down. And you're just going to have that constant cycle repeat itself over and over and over again. And it's not something that most people enjoy. So, to get around that, you really have to be considerate of a few things. Well, first of all, you need to be aware of the fact that if you don't have enough resources, you need to actually scour the map of resources, meaning you need to know where your level 1s are, where your level 2s are, 3s and 4 tiles. And you have to start making some conscious decisions. Are you going to gather your way to that? Are you going to buy your way to that? Because again, there's the option of buying resources from both IGG's store or players through the gift system, or there's the option of actually stealing resources. And that's, yeah, you heard that right. That means going after and actually hitting people. What a surprise! And again, the big thing with that, though, is that you have to be able to store it, and that's key. Now, most people, I would say, when they first start out, they would probably not have any idea what to do. You don't know how to store that kind of, and we're talking not, a couple hundred mil, we're talking maybe a few billion, right? Let's suppose if you got so much resources that it's an unfathomable amount, so much that you either completely capitulate at the sheer thought of having to sit there and go click, 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 having to send gatherers over and over and over again. Which, again, believe me, I could imagine most people would find that incredibly annoying. In case you're wondering how you get around that, there's one key factor. You either A, build up enough troops to hold those resources, and then either have an alt to go scour those resources out for you, or you do the reverse, which is to say, put 100 million plus
on, say, another account and maybe another account, and store it on, like, say, a bank, and maybe put some into another bank and maybe put it on another bank or something akin to that, so you don't have all your resources in one place. Because again, odds are if someone hits that bank and it had everything in it, you're gonna regret it. Believe me, it's no fun. But because again, sometimes banks just they don't get properly shielded. Something goes horribly wrong, but that's why you never want to put your ducks all in the same pile. Now, having that said, all right, I've talked to you briefly about garrison trapping. I've talked to you a little bit about, rally trapping and how you can get some gems. And what I haven't told you really too much about, right, is really, well, how do you actually make any of this possible, right? Because you're maybe 50 million might, maybe you're 30 million might, or for all I know, you could be 500,000. How do you go from that to this? It's really, I mean, in some cases, most people are going to look up and they'll say, it must take money. Yeah, money is probably the fastest route to get there, but frankly, I think even the average player can do this. My advice to you is that if you are aiming for this kind of strategy, or if you want to actually play the game like this, you do need to be very considerate of a couple of things. Most importantly, you need to be able to actually, at any given time, you need to be able to actually be aware of your surroundings. Oftentimes, people will end up putting themselves up to par with, say, like, I don't know, let's say a billion might player. Can I trap a person at a billion might? The answer is yes, because again, funny enough, regardless of how many times you send range at infantry, infantry always comes out on top. In fact, it takes so much so that if you have your leader in there, I almost, frankly, I would, no matter how many times. And that, what really will become noticeable is the tier of the unit. So, if you had tier 3 infantry and he's sending tier 4 range, then yes, it will be noticeable. You will probably lose. But suppose you had tier 4 infantry versus tier 4 range, then it completely cancels out and you always win. Now, that is important because essentially, if you've only got 250k, you don't really have a lot to work with. Sometimes people, will pop an army attack boost or an army defense boost. Either one's fine, but you need to be cautious of players that are going to be sending troop counters. You have to be cautious of the fact that that a player that you're having to eat this attack from may or may not have the right composition, may or may not have, they may be mixed for all you know, they may be on one unit type, and those are kind of things that you need to be really, 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 really careful of when you do this strategy, because it will fall flat on your face. You'll lose your leader and everything. It's no good. You got to be incredibly careful. But I say that because I'm sure there will be someone out there that will probably end up making that mistake. But anyway, right? And back to the fact that, again, if you're only and you're just starting the game, maybe you're just, you're getting to where you can actually start thinking about doing these kinds of things. I would say that the core part to any of this is you need to have 2 accounts, meaning that you need to have a main account that has the kind of research to support itself. Meaning you have tier 3s. Maybe you've got some gear. Doesn't need to be the greatest amount of gear. I mean, it can be anywhere from, just a couple of relics to, even the simplest things. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you need to be able to at least apply the correct stats when you wear them. Meaning that if you're gonna wear something, you best have the right gear on at the right time, or it will not work. Now, again, I say that, and of course, I'm sure there will be circumstances where you may, in fact, get hit not once, but twice. Now, I will say this, and I say this with a word of caution to just about anybody that tries this. You'll want to be incredibly cautious of the player that's going to port and then proceed to have multiple attacks come after you. Okay, I recommend you eat the first one and then you bail. Now, obviously, when you bail, you got your leader out, and that is no good. Now, this is the main concern, right? Is because now that you're bailing, you've got your troop and you've got your garrison in said castle, and now it's kicked out, and now it's going back to you very slowly. What can possibly happen, I wonder? Ah, yes, that someone could probably time it and, well, murder you. Well, I'll have you know, if you want to avoid that possibility,
you need to be incredibly cautious. And that means that if you're going to do that kind of thing, my recommendation is have reinforcements, meaning that you have your guild reinforce you with 1,000,000 troops. And that is my advice because, frankly, suppose your leader falls in, guess what happens? You get a trap. And that is in itself, regardless of how much might that person may or may not have it, only 250k, you're not going to get a whole lot out of it, especially if you've got 1,000,000 reinforcements. Mind you, they better not be tier 1s, they have to be tier 3s. Maybe tier 2s. I mean, you can probably manage with tier 2s, but tier 3s, most importantly, and you'll be okay. You'll probably bounce out of that at least somewhat, unscathed, at least to some extent. It will certainly be expensive for the guy that attacked you, but you also want to make sure that the moment that guy attacks you, that you put your troops in the shelter, and God knows what else you can do, like, rally attack and put an 8-hour, put all your troops left in there, and then, immediately try to pop a shield if you can. Anything to avoid getting hurt. Because, again, that's a big, big factor when you do garrison trapping. You don't want to get hurt, much less, what about this account, perhaps? Well, you probably don't want to lose the troops in there, so you better be careful of that as well. But, needless to say, on the other topic, right? In regards to actually going around and getting the resources, right, and going about stealing it, I've had some people that have actually kind of wondered, well, how do I determine who is and isn't a bank, who is and isn't going to have resources, who and isn't, how? Okay, look, simple, very simple, very simple, very simple. Let me assure you. Okay, one thing that you have to be very mindful of, okay, is that you need to be aware of the castle level of said player. So if they are below level 25, that means they can lose all their gold, okay? And that means everybody that has no gold, more than likely, is below level 25. And now, if they are level 25, that means they can hold up to 3.5 million across. Now, that's assuming that they're on the core stats. There are some people that are a little bit higher, but it's usually not very much. 3.5 million is about standard, meaning that if it has anything above that, that is about the original rule of thumb. Now, if you might want my opinion, if you're going to spend a relocator, which is about 1,500 gems, which is fairly expensive for most people, my recommendation is you probably don't want to steal that for any more than what you can get out of it, meaning that, according to standards that are raised by players that actually sell resources, 20 million gold is about right, or 50 to 60 million stone, or 50 to 60 million timber, etc., etc. Yeah, you always want to have an excess amount of that before you ever port. And that's for the players that are in the bigger kingdoms. If you're in the smaller kingdoms, then that is going to really depend on generally how greedy can you possibly be, how much resources is of need, because again, some people will hit in bulk, and I understand that, and that's totally workable. But just be careful, because again, don't ever, and this is my advice for anybody that plays this game, but don't hit an anti-scout if you don't know what's in there, because oftentimes it never ends well. Not to say that you can't do it, because you can take a gamble at it, but believe me, I've known many that have failed at that very gamble. Yeah, of course. Without further ado, all right. As you guys have probably all seen, all right, they have kind of went ahead and they kind of dropped some packs, which again, it's kind of interesting. It's like you got Dark Follower, you got the Migration Scroll pack, you got your Mecha Trojan pack, you got all these different packs, and I'm sure some of you guys are out there probably not too big into spending into this game, but believe me, a lot of these seem enticing, I'm sure. And those are entirely all up to you. I'm not going to even slightly give anybody advice when it comes to packs, because believe me, they're really, I don't know, they're needless to say, you can ask anybody, but believe me, I'm not even going to get it started in that. Now, having that said, again, I would say that for the most part, though, if you really want to be able to enjoy the game and play the game like anybody, okay, generally speaking, to be like a rally lead, right? I mean, again, a lot of times people think that you need to be like 150 million might, or you got to be 200 million might, or whatever. And really, generally speaking, all you really need is okay gear and okay stats. That's really all you need. But a lot of the time, the real key is actually having players to do it. Even in small kingdoms where, they can push if your guild is not online. you're gonna have a problem, you know. But if you plan those kind of things in advance, you tell, hey everybody, let's get on at 8 o'clock, let's do this and yada yada yada. You know, maybe you use Wii gamers for example. You meet up and grow, you know, get your people together. Works a hell of a lot better than I suppose if you had not done it. But hey, but man, I just say that from experience because believe me, trying to call people at like 8 o'clock or 12 o'clock or God knows maybe even 1 in the morning, believe me, you're gonna have a real hard time waking people up all of a sudden, just saying, hey, well, we're gonna do a rally, and be like, whoa, 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 I wasn't planning on that. Well, you know, you'd be surprised. Needless to say, though, what I'm trying to get at, though, right, in terms of stats, is if you don't push at least 200 to 300%, and again, this is really, 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 really depends on the kingdom. You know, if you're an older kingdom that's out of migration lock, meaning you can't port into it, and if you're still stuck in one of those, then this is probably not going to apply. But if you're out of those, then generally the rule is probably anywhere from 300 to 400%. Is about an okay amount, but 500 to 600 is like on the very, very high end of it. But for the guy that's playing with tier threes, you're okay at around 200 to 300%. Now, having that said, right? Again, I focus on a couple of things, and this is the general philosophy: is that you want to have 2 unit stats that you max out, and then proceed to put as much HP defense and army attack as you can possible. Because again, a lot of the core stats that you can get out of that is an enormous amount. It's so much that, in fact, I love it to death. But you know, again, when it comes to stats and how much you can actually bulk it, it's entirely up to you. But you know, again, remember your buildings and remember why I say army attack buildings are not so bad in the case of manors. It's because that it adds so much army attack, and frankly, I can bulk it up. You know, for what I miss out on, I can put in different places, like in the talent respec. I can change. In fact, if you guys want to know what talent respec I currently use, this is the one that I am actually currently using. So I max out squad offense, I max out squad health 1, and then I go all the way down and I max out squad health 2 and squad defense 2. That's it. Then I save it. Now, when I actually need to go and spec, and let's suppose I'm going to be in range in infantry, I'll max out range offense 3, infantry offense 2, and then I will go down here and I will max out range offense 1 and infantry offense 1. Now, obviously, you could just as easily max out squad defense 1 with the extra points you have. You can do different variations of it depending on what your stats allow. Because again, you need to be really, really, really paying attention to what's going on over your core stats. Because again, your core stats are ultimately what determines whether you win or lose. So it's incredibly important that you pay attention to that, because that will ultimately determine what you need more of at any given time. Now, again, I hope you guys found this video somewhat helpful, and maybe it is, maybe it didn't, I don't know. But feel free to let me know what you want to know more about in the comment section below. Maybe if I get some more ideas, I'll compile it into a video that's a little less general like this video was. But needless to say, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.